Oh dear. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. And obviously, so we did a little bit of changing here, and I am trying, I have a new camera and a new little setup. So bear with me as we get started, but it's going to be just as energizing, hopefully, as the last time. So welcome back. Today, we're going to talk about answering Form I-9 onboarding challenges, remote workers, and the future of virtual verification to avoid business disruption. We selected this topics primarily because of the challenges with the workforce right now. So I'm trying to give you solutions to address issues that you may find onboarding candidates through the I-9 and the E-Verify process. Obviously, remote workers is something that is here to stay. And then the first future virtual verification that I think is very interesting. And this is a very proactive topic. In almost like a year in advance, you're going to be hearing what the proposed is, because that's what we're going to be talking about. But I really think it's important for you to start looking at it right now because of the benefits that it will bring to you. So, see, a lot of you are here. So tell me in the chat that you are with me. You're ready to engage and learn. Yes? Awesome. Okay. A few more of you. Fabulous. Yes. I love emojis. My staff tell me that I'm the queen of emojis. So I like those. Okay. Let's see. Now, hopefully, this is not you after the last workshop, correct? Good. Hopefully that never happens. But if it does, and hopefully after all of this, it's not going to be as a result of an I-9, because I'm going to give you tools so that that is not happening to you. All right. Now, I know we have a lot going on, all of us. And again, as last time, actually, I'm going to do something a little different. I asked you at the end of the workshop last time, when you look at where you started with me at the beginning versus where you were then at the end, on the scale of 1 to 10 being totally confused, and 10 being like, fully confident. I want you to pick a number now as to where you are right now in your confidence level with I-9s and immigration compliance and whatnot. 1 being, completely confused, 10 being, I'm pretty comfortable here. And then let's see what that looks like at the end of the workshop. Hopefully it goes up. Again, my goal here is to get you up on that balance beam, not down. Okay. What are we going to talk about again? We're going to talk about the challenges, some of them. 7. Okay, cool. Okay, awesome. Well, keep that number in mind. And let's see, hopefully, like I said, at the end, we're going up a little, even if it's 0.2. Onboarding challenges, best practices, prepare for the exciting future, position yourself to be in good compliance and avoid fines. Again, as we did before, I am going to give you some breaks. Actually, they may not be, we'll see, they may end up being work time, like work just for you to catch up on things that you have on your end. But I've modified the slides a little bit so that we are going to work through them together a little bit more than what I had planned before. And we can collaborate more so we can hear from each other as to what some of you are doing, because you're all maybe doing some very awesome things that would be good for others to know. So we're going to talk about the recap from the last workshop, just so we're all on the same page. Again, I-9 challenges, collaborating on that. We're going to take a 5-minute kind of break. Then we're going to come back and talk about remote verification and E-Verify. Then we're going to take a 10-minute break. Then the future of virtual verification, then mitigating mistakes and how to be in compliance, avoid fines. We're going to do a fun quiz like we did before. And that we may skip that break and kind of work through it depending on where we are on the time, give you the bonus. How many of you had a chance to look at the bonus that you received? Bonus, did you get it? Did you receive it? Okay. Okay, not yet. Okay. Okay, you will get another one today. There is some good gems in there. So I would encourage you to look at it. Okay. At least you got it. So I did my part. We did our part. But yeah, 4 questions from the prior one, 4 questions this time. They're short answers, and look at them. And then a sneak peek at the upcoming course that I also mentioned last time when we were together. All right, here we go. Okay, bonus, I talked to you about that. Again, turn off distractions for now. This is your time. You're here to learn with me and to learn together. Okay, recap from workshop 1. No NAs, EAs, 1-page form instead of the 2 pages that we're using right now, section 1, section 2, all combined, 2 new supplements, the list of acceptable documents that you're going to see load a few times, that's what it means, updated to include a link to list C, so you're going to have to or be able to go and look for some documents that are not listed on the list of acceptable documents. And then the instruction changing from 5 to 7. Now that's kind of the big picture. Now tell me, just pick one thing, except for this ones, that you learned from the last workshop that you may have known and you just kind of, oh my God, I forgot about that. I'm going to start doing that, or oh, I didn't know, that's something good to know. What is your one takeaway from the last workshop? Let me know in the chat before I move on. Don't think too deep, just whatever pops up. Okay. What else? You cannot tell applicants what to bring. So the preamble to that is you need to send them the documents, the list. Foreign passports on I-4 combo plus EAD codes. Awesome. Some expired documents is okay. Yes. Love it. Codes on EADs. Yes. Restricted Social Security. Okay. Fabulous. Yes. Foreign passports. Awesome. I love it. Okay. Good. Thanks for sharing. And I'm kind of reading through because again, some of you may have said, oh yeah, that's true. Social Security numbers or the restrictions and the codes on the EADs. I mean, that is just a whole world that also changes. The funny thing is, as I was making my final edits to this, and Danny was like, Giselle, I'm going to give you a cutoff time. No more changes. And as I don't know, it was 6 o'clock yesterday or whatever. And I was like, hi, Danny, I can't resist because I got an I-9 update. And it was, employment authorization documents incident to status. That's something else that maybe some of you didn't know, right? That there were some people that are non-citizens that were authorized incident to status. And an update came through yesterday about the Afghanis and the Ukrainians that are coming in and they're getting employment authorizations incident to status. And I started the slide and I was like, no, I'm just going to talk about it because Danny will kill me if she has to, adjust another slide. But there you go. That's the latest. And I thought, oh my goodness, how appropriate. Okay. This I think is amazing. Whenever it happens, most likely towards the end of this year, beginning of 2024. But frankly, preparation needs to start now for you all. So tick, my drum roll. This has been something that SHRM, employers, the American Immigration Lawyers Association, the whole world that can have a voice on this. have been, and this was pre-COVID, that we've been trying to get the government to be more flexible with allowing remote verifications. And I was even on a conference where an ICE officer said, and this was a high-ranking ICE officer, over my dead body, that would never happen. The permanent remote verification was like, oh my goodness, that's, that's hard. But here it is. We are looking at it. It is being talked about. A lot of comments were submitted to ICE. They opened public comments. They closed them in October 2022. I followed the proposed rule and the comments. I think almost every comment was pro allowing it. So we'll talk in the second part of the session about what is proposed and how to prepare. Okay, you were here with me last time, 20 years doing this, still passionate about it. And so is my team. And again, Danny is my amazing legal assistant that I could not do anything with all of this without her. She's also been amazing at creating all these beautiful slides. So thank you. Thank you to all of you. And again, every case is unique. I know I did get some emails that were very case specific. So I'm not going to be touching on those, but I will reach out to the people that send those questions and see what we can do to help them. Okay, if you have disconnected, come back to me because we are starting the substantive part of the conversation. Okay, are you with me? Connected, thank you. All right, there's a lot of you here. Yes, okay, awesome. Okay, explore onboarding challenges and how to overcome them. Now, this section is it's a let's collaborate section, and I have it here again because you probably see now hiring everywhere. There is more job openings that there are candidates for the job, so making this process as simple and as efficient for you is important. One of the challenges that you may encounter is the E-Verify TNCs. How many of you get E-Verify TNCs? How many of you are using E-Verify? Let's start there, because that's an important point. Okay. Okay. Okay, it sounds like a fair amount of you are using. Cool. Okay. How many of you are having, if you know, say more than 10% TNCs? I'm assuming you know what a TNC is, a tentative non-confirmation. Okay. Okay. Cool. Ooh, you're ahead of the game. Wow. Okay. Okay. Awesome. Well, that's awesome. That's really good to know. So you are actually in a very good position. So kudos to you. So let me just give you a little bit of background because it happens. And so that's what I said, more than 10%, because it is not unusual to have some TNCs. And typically what happens is the data that you put on the I-9, and that's why, you have to start with the I-9. It's the data that is entered in the I-9 that goes to E-Verify. And some people think, well, because I have E-Verify, I don't have to worry about I-9 compliance. And that's not the case necessarily. And I'll give you an example, frankly, that just happened to us a few days ago. I had him, and it was just funny because we had just, actually, no, it was after I was waiting for an I-9 to come to me that we had requested, because whenever people reach out to me about an issue, and I think I said that in the prior workshop, whether it is I-9 compliance, E-Verified, or immigration, immigration status, whatever it is, I'm going to always say, send me the documents, because the documents really tell me more of the full story. And then I want to talk to the people after I see the documents to bring in the pieces. In this particular situation, and hopefully you'll appreciate this, I asked for the documents, and I got a section 1 that the candidate, well, the non-citizen had marked that they were a legal permanent resident, okay? I'm good with that. Then we go to section 2, and the person that completed section 2 completed list B and list C. Under the list B document, they put a driver's license, all good. Under the list C document, under the list C document, they put the EAD. What is the problem with that? 2 big problems. And we kind of talked about this also in a completely different example, but it amazes me. It is it's common. I mean, I'm just giving you, so we have, again, section 1, they marked that they were a legal permanent resident. Section 2, they provided an employment authorization document and a driver's license. At least that's what the HR professional accepted. They put the driver's license and the EAD of list B and C document. That's right. Okay. Right. Okay. The first big thing is that, and we mentioned this before in a different example. It was the example I provided before was a U.S. citizen. Someone that was not a U.S. citizen had marked U.S. citizens in section 1, and then they provided something else in section 2. And then here, again, we have someone that marked they were a legal permanent resident, and then they provide an EAD. But that does not match, okay? You're one or the other. And it could be that they had the EAD and they forgot to bring the legal permanent residency card, whatever it is. But you, as an HR professional, need to be able to know, and that's why you're here, that if they mark they're the legal permanent resident on section 1, they should not be giving you an EAD as their work authorization document, because the legal permanent resident should be it. Or they could give you a driver's license and a non-restricted social security card. That would be okay. Okay. But EAD, legal permanent resident, that does not go. And then the HR professional accepted and noted the EAD as a list C document. And an EAD is both an identity and a work authorization document. So it would have been a list A document, if anything, if they could have accepted it, which in this case they could not. Now, in that particular case, got really complicated. I don't know how they did this, but when you enter that data in E-Verify, what they ended up entering was the information from the EAD. And that EAD, we actually ended up finding out based on the code and whatever, and I'm giving you kind of additional information here, but code, if the employee had an EAD that was a valid EAD. So E-Verify would not have given the tentative non-confirmation because it was a good EAD. But the whole I-9 had a lot of issues, okay? How does the HR person fix that? Yeah, so and we're in the process of doing that right now. Thankfully, the person is still there. So they're gonna have to go back to that person, and that person is gonna have to, and the form looks pretty clean. So we're gonna, they're gonna have to use a new form. The one that is kind of expired, but in current right now, and they're gonna have to, he's gonna have to do section 1 and mark that he is a non-citizen authorized to work to a particular date. And then section 2 is going to have to be redone with the correct number of documents. And all of that is going to have to be put together so that they know that there was an original I-9 that was done. And then as a result of an internal audit, this was identified and was corrected, okay? Now, if this is not done, we're going to talk about it later on. Is an audit memo necessary? It's not necessary, but what happens quite often is that maybe you're there, but maybe you're not. It's going to be somebody else. So basically, you're helping whoever the next person in that position is to understand what happened. And it's not that difficult. You can even put a note on the new I-9 somewhere that basically says this was done as a result of an audit on such and such a day by whoever. It makes a clean record for everyone involved. It makes it easier on, even if it's you, who knows? I mean, when you're dealing with that many documents, I-9s are one of a million documents that you have to deal with. I mean, I don't remember what cases or what documents I looked at, 2 weeks ago. Imagine 10 years from now, whenever they come around and do an audit or something else. So it's a good practice, okay? So that's kind of that. But again, in that particular situation, the I-9 under an audit would have failed. They would have, and I'm going to go through that and what the penalties would have been. Because some people, like some HR professionals say, well, I get that, but my management doesn't get it. Well, when you start seeing the amount of fines and how they get calculated, which we're going to talk about later on, it makes no sense to not spend $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, whatever it is, whatever you can afford, whatever you think you need to do to keep up with immigration compliance and do the trainings that you can also use as a mitigating factor. So long story. Okay, coming back to the tentative non-confirmation and E-Verify. So you take the information from the I-9, you put it on E-Verify, and E-Verify runs the data that was entered through the Social Security database and the DHS database. And hopefully, if the data is clean, you're going to come back with, authorized to work, which is like most of you are getting. Again, don't be overconfident that because you have 100% E-Verified, approved or verified to work, that you don't have issues with your I-9s. I just gave you a perfect scenario example where it doesn't matter where Verify gave you in terms of ability to work. Yeah, the person was authorized, but there's fines for I-9 compliance, just filling out the form incorrectly. In it sense, when you get a tentative non-confirmation, for those of you that will get it eventually, never fire the person because of a tentative non-confirmation. Basically, it's just saying tentative non-confirmation is a warning that there is a mismatch on data. That's all it is. And there is a process that you go through with the employee and with E-Verify to get, correct that mismatch. Okay, so and in this particular situation, it was a SSA in this example, an SSA tentative non-confirmation. So it's going to tell you a DHS or SSA, and depending on what it is, then you meet with the employee, you tell them about it, and in most cases, in your workforce, the clients that I work with, the employee is going to say, oh, that's wrong, I forgot to change my name or whatever, and they're going to get it fixed. Other populations where, frankly, the SSA is a tentative non-confirmation because they're using somebody else's social security number, when you meet with them, they typically just won't come back to work. So you kind of start getting some ideas as to kind of how this works, okay? So that is that, and then based on that, I'm going to have a question for you. A tentative non-confirmation can result from any of the following: information not entered correctly by the employer, name change not reported, citizenship or immigration status change and not reported. What do you think? Yes to all of them? No? It depends. Yeah. Okay. So all of this. can cause, yeah, all of this can cause a TNC. And the first one, when I get a TNC question, the first thing that I ask them, I ask you all to do, make sure that there's no data entry that is incorrectly. That in the clientele that I work with, you all most likely is a data entry error. Okay, and so you have to start looking there first. And if that's the issue, fix it, move on. You're done. Okay. All right, easy peasy. Okay, we talked about the challenges about the SSNs. We talked about the restrictions on the SSN. I think we got that because of your answers there. Now, two other things that come up with SSNs are, particularly for those of you that are working with some foreign nationals, particularly the ones that are coming from abroad. They come into the United States and they do not have a Social Security number. So they're going to have to wait for that Social Security number to be issued. During the COVID period, when things were closed, it was a huge backlog, take it forever. But the point for me putting the slide here is you do not restrict that person's ability to work because they don't have an SSN. Okay, as long as they're authorized to work, you can put them on payroll and you can talk to your payroll provider, your CPA or whatever. And there's actually also a lot of information on the SSN website, the Social Security Administration website, that provides guidance on this. But the question that I get asked a lot from my employers is, oh my God, they don't have a Social Security number, what do I do? If they have an H-1B, they have an L, they have an O, they have whatever work visa, whatever it is, an employment authorization document, they may not have an employment authorization document. It's typically a work visa. You can put them on payroll, get them started, despite the fact that they don't have a Social Security number, and then you fix that, you come back and fix it once they get that number. You do have to make sure that they get started and they apply, blah, blah, blah. Then when it comes to E-Verify, you have another different challenge, because as of today, you cannot open a case in E-Verify until they actually have a Social Security number. So the E-Verify process is on hold. Even though they started working, you cannot start the E-Verify process until they get a Social Security number. So this is something that you just have to keep in mind when you have someone that has started to work for you without a Social Security number. Okay. All right. Don't know if I have a question. Yeah. Okay. I gave you the answer already. I can create a case in E-Verify even if my employee has applied but does not yet have a Social Security number. What is the answer? I can create a case in E-Verify even if my employee has applied but does not yet have a Social Security number. You cannot create a case in E-Verify. Okay, you have to wait until they get the Social Security number. You can get them started working, but not create a case in E-Verify. All right. And our beautiful EADs. Okay, overcoming challenges with expired employment authorization documents. Again, this is a lot to talk about. I have the C09 category here because, again, it's the one that you may see a lot. Again, C09 is those that are in the United States that have applied for a green card. So they have applied for, they're on the adjustment of status process, and they get an employment authorization document card as part of their process until they get a green card. So many of you may have employees that are in this situation. These cards are going to have an expiration date. They're typically 2-year cards. And right now, many of them, depending on when the cards were issued, and because, again, of all the backlogs that they have, they're on a 540-day extension, when typically it is 180 days. Okay, so the 180 days, the way it would work is you would look at the expiration date on the card itself, 02/25/23. That's what we have now. And then you would look at the code, category code, C09. you would ask the person, and this is typically what you would be doing if you're re-verifying. They're going to say, you see your tickler that you have a document that is expiring and you need to re-verify. So you go to the person and they're like, oh yeah, well, I applied to extend it. And you go, well, I need something before 2/25. And they're going to say, well, my attorney told me that I can continue to work. Like, okay, well, you need to send me something else. And the something else that they're going to have to give you is, and this is, it's a list of acceptable documents. So it's going to be, you're going to take, well, actually, it's not on the list of acceptable documents. You almost have to know what you need to receive, and you have to make a notation on the additional fields. The way the process works by, again, looking at the category code in the receipt notice that they receive from applying for the extension of this document. That receipt notice had to have been filed before the expiration of the card. The category codes need to be the same, which is important because sometimes the category codes do not match. And if they do not match, you cannot use that. But if the category codes match, the receipt number was received before the expiration date of the card, then you take 180 days from 2/25, so plus 180 days, and this card is extended for that period of time. Now, for some of them, now you can do plus 540 days, which is huge. But it's a temporary rule that is available until October 28th, 2023, the 540 days, okay? But that has been a huge, for HR professionals that didn't know this, and even for nationals, I mean, some of them are not really up to date into what's happening, which it's okay, that's why we have a job. And there are people that really have been saved from being off work because of this rule, the 180 day or the 540 days. So this is really huge for you to be able to keep employees on board. Okay, let me see what I have here. Oh, I can't remember what I put at quizzes, so I'm giving you the answers before. Hopefully this is helping you put it all together. I can accept an expiring EAD card under the automatic extension rule as the list A document, as long as I have evidence of a timely file employment authorization document renewal. The renewal is in the same category, and the category is eligible for extension. Answer is yes. Okay. How many of you have used this rule? Me, not me, never heard about it. I'm happy to know. Okay. Okay. Wow. Cool. Okay. Well, for those of you that have never used it, now you know it's available for you to use and, potentially hire or keep some people. Okay. Let me see what I have going on next. We have the break time. So it's 2:35. Let's see. I am going to give you a 5-minute break because my light went off. For some reason, I think because I am managing the slides and not Danny. Ha! This is what happens when I take control of technology. It is 2:35. I'm going to be back starting timely about learn best practices for verification of remote workers at 2:40. Okay, and I'm going to ask, so you can go if you want to come back to me at 2:40. I'm going to answer some of the questions that I have in here. Is it HR's responsibility to keep track of expiration dates, or it's the worker? Well, I would say it's both, frankly, because the one that is going to be liable for keeping someone employed that is not authorized to work is the employer. Okay, the liability is on the employer. But to tell you the truth, the employees are very, very good at keeping track of their own because they want to work. But I would not necessarily rely on that. For those that for our clients, we keep track of all the expirations and we meet with them regularly or send them reports so that they also have a second, second tracker, which is us, as to what's happening. So I would say I wouldn't necessarily leave it up to them because the liability is on you. Would you need to keep your expiration documents with the I-9 for future audits? Yes, I would recommend that you keep your supporting documents with your I-9s and they get filed separately from your employee documents in a separate folder, separate file, separate scan, whatever you do. But I mean, the expiring documents are going to be part of what gave them the ability to work in the first place. So you have to have that. And so that's already there. That's already part of the file. What you would have to keep, and maybe that's what you're asking, is if you're using this automatic extension of 180 days or 140 days or whatever, you do have to keep the documents that they gave you in support of that. So in this particular case, it would be the receipt notice that shows that the category codes are the same and that they file for an extension before the expiration of the document. Frankly, that's about the only document that you have to keep extra. And then you again have to titular the 180 days, and then you re-verify when they get the new EAD, and you keep a copy of that new EAD. So that's how that would work. Okay, how long will the extension last? Okay, so the 180-day extension has been in the books for a long time. So that one is there. The 540-day extension expires. I think I said it before. It was on my prior. I think it was on my prior slide, or I just found new. Gosh, I can't remember the 540-day. I don't have it written down here. But the 540 days actually out. It's going to be out for a little while. So I'll make a note of that, because I actually, when I was preparing this presentation, I thought, I haven't done a summary of that rule, which I typically do when something like this comes up, but I haven't really had anybody that it's pretty recent or fairly recent. So I haven't really had it. I think I had one client that asked me that they had an employment authorization dog, like a kind of a situation like this. And I knew about it and I'm like, let me just see what applies. And the 540-day applied. And I was like, okay, these cases are starting to come through, so I need to write something about it. But that one is going to be around past this year from off the top of my head. But when that one goes away, the 180 days will still be there. If older I-9s were done on expired forms, but an extension was in effect, or maybe not in effect, yet not documentation is on file either way. How do you get in compliance? Shannon, I think we're going to have to talk about that one between you and I. Because it is 240. And not only that's more specific, but I have your question. Okay. All right. Tell me that you are back to me. Okay. Back. Okay. Yes. Okay, awesome. All right. Look forward to seeing everybody back. Yes. Okay, learn best practices for verification of remote workers. And part of the reason I have this here is because as I do this work, I encounter some workplaces that have determined that this temporary virtual flexibility is permanent, and that they don't have to do a physical inspection ever again. And that is not right. It is a temporary virtual verification. And we have to make sure that there's processes in place when that goes away. Okay, so remote hires, temporary virtual flexibility. The way it's supposed to work is you can do a flexible inspection via fax, video, email for those working exclusively remotely, okay? And that exclusively can be arguably vague. And that's, I think, where a lot of workplaces are relying on. Well, they're not exclusively remotely because they come into the office every so often. And, you know, many of us are doing that. You know, or come to the office once a week or 2 times a week or whatever it is. When that person comes back to the office on a consistent basis, whatever that means, you must do any in-person verification within 3 business days of that person coming back on a consistent basis on a in person. So say me, I come into the office every Thursday. And if that is what consistently I am doing, and my employer knows that, and they verify me remotely using the temporary virtual verification, under the law, my employer needs to do an in-person verification within 3 days of me consistently coming into the office on Thursdays, okay? So for those of you that are not doing that, and you're just, you know, piling a list of I-9s that were verified virtually, and the person comes in and out of the office, defined remote, well, that's what I'm saying. That is, it's a loose term. I mean, remote would be, and actually, because I have more slides on that, so I'll come back to this. Let me just kind of, sometimes I get distracted by the chat and I don't complete what I need to be doing. So I'm going to redirect myself. The temporary deferment right now, this temporary virtual verification is available until July 31st, 2023. It is started, as you probably all remember, in March of 2022, March of 2020. And then we had like 1 month and then another month. And then they decided, oh, maybe we'll do it for 4 months. And then they decided, well, maybe 6. So here we are right now with a 6 months extension that they gave us. And it could end July 31st. It could be extended a little more, or it could end before that. We don't know. But you have to keep in mind, again, that this is not a forever rule as of now, okay? You must still perform the in-person inspection. Potential future change, and we're going to talk about that in the second part of the presentation. All right, so this is, again, what the rule says. Current temporary exemption for in-person verification for those employees that were hired on or after April 1st, 2021. And I put this here because the rule before that, from March 2020 to April 1st, 2021, was a little different. Who work exclusively in a remote setting due to the COVID precautions, blah, 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 are temporarily exempt from the physical inspection. This condition remains until the remote worker undertakes non-remote employment on a regular, consistent, or predictable basis. So that's kind of what you have to think about. Or the extension of the flexibilities relating to such requirement is terminated, whichever is earlier. Okay, that's the rule that we're working under. So how do you prepare for the end of this virtual flexibility? I would suggest, how many of you actually are taking advantage of this virtual flexibility and have I-9s that have only been verified virtually? So basically the person is in Jacksonville or whatever, and they come into the office, but not on a consistent, regular basis. You verify them, or somebody did via Zoom or whatever method you used. You completed the I-9 and notated person virtually verified, which is what you have to do. But an in-person verification has not been done. And you're not going to be the only one. Like I said, this is an ongoing issue because, and that's why I have it here. Okay. Anybody just has some in-person or virtual verifications that have not been verified personal? You know, they're in person. Okay. And cool. I'm going to be, hopefully you can come and give us some tips on that, because that's one of the slides that I have. Okay. Well, let me go through, for those of you that may be using this benefit, which if I was an HR professional, I would, if I could use it or needed to use it. When flexibility ends, you should have right now a list of all the employees that were verified virtually. Again, those I-9s should have been noted as virtually verified by whoever did it and whatever date. The day that that person returns to work, again, on a regular, consistently and predictable basis, 3 days from whatever that date is, you need to do an in-person verification. And again, annotate the I-9 with COVID-19 for the reason for the delayed in-person verification, and then documents physically examined plus, or whatever the date it was done, in-person verification, the person's initials or the name of the person that reviewed. Okay. And I put here stay alert for changes, because and don't take this as an excuse not to do this, because it's only been in commentary and some of the circles that I participate, that we have said to the government, well, they have been doing this, obviously have verified the person, and we're looking into permanent in-person verification, into a remote permanent verification. Would you consider just grandfathering in some of these I-9s? And who knows, that may happen. But again, do not please take that as like, oh my God, Giselle said, so I'm not going to worry about this, whatever, 10, 15, 20 I-9s or 100 that have never been in person verified. Because when the rule changes, and if it changes and they just decide, you know what, you have to go back and in person verify, you're going to have a lot of work that you are not expecting to do. Okay. So this is your cheat sheet for that if you are in that situation. Okay. What if employees always work remotely? And I proactively was thinking about that question, and somebody said, what does that mean? Remote workers. I consider myself hybrid. So I come into the office, I work remotely. But I would consider, and again, me, and I think I think it's a flexible word. So you have to define it as because they're not going to look at, well, how did Giselle define it? They're going to say, how do you as an employer defines a remote worker? Because really it's what you determine is complete remote. And I would say someone like that, and I have some, as we file H-1B workers right now, we have some that are never going to come into the office. They're going to be working from home. Headquarters of the company is in Jacksonville, and they're, say, in Atlanta. And they're not going to come into Jacksonville ever. And they're fully remote. They may have even interviewed by Zoom or something. So those to me are fully remote workers. So what do you do with those people? How do you verify them? So here are some of the things that other companies are doing. They use a remote company representative. So you may have, someone that you assign to be your representative for I-9 purposes, a trusted agent or similar. And notaries come into that category. And I have a separate slide for notaries. You allow 2 employees. So let's say you have 2 employees in Atlanta that work remotely, and one has been with the company for a while, and you trust that person enough that they could do the I-9 verification for the other one. Some companies are doing that. Or, maybe the employee needs to come into the office for some sort of training. And that's kind of when you do the in-person verification. Or in other situations, have employers that they may have a work site. Again, I'm just using Jacksonville and Atlanta for whatever purposes, but they may have a group of people that got hired in Atlanta to do a particular job, and the HR representative goes there and does the I-9 in-person verification because it's just more efficient for that one person to go there and get it done. Okay, so those are some ideas of what other HR professionals are doing for those that are remote. Okay, now who is using notaries as your authorized agent? Okay, I know somebody is. Okay. Okay. All right. So here's the thing with notaries. They're great. I mean, they're typically someone that has some level of that has risen to a certain level of trust. Obviously, then they're notarizing documents. They have risen to that level, and you're looking for someone that you can trust. But they have not been trained on I-9s. I think the only reason this kind of happened that people started using notaries is because they were in a pinch and they had like, oh my God, what do I do? And then there is someone that, again, you can trust to some degree to do something for you. So you could consider using notaries. I frankly would suggest that you explore some of the other things, like you may have another worker that could do the verification, or you can have another HR professional in another area that you're colleagues, and you can help each other out. You verify theirs, she verifies yours, or you bring the person in for in-person training. But if you have to use a notary, I mean, that's the other thing, that you can typically find them in a in a remote location that you may need. But many of them are not training I-9s. So you do need to provide them with some training. And the other thing that I've seen notaries do, because really they don't know any better, they actually stamp the I-9 with their notary stamp. They don't have to do that. They're not signing the I-9 as notaries. They're just signing it as a trusted person, okay? And you also have to be careful with the states, what a notary is allowed to do or not do in certain states. So that's kind of my background with notaries. Mayor's Bank is having the vendor that does their fingerprintings now. Okay, there you go. And that's why I kind of call this let's collaborate pieces of presentations, because it's good to know. I would not be surprised. Good. Okay. I love it when you guys mention something that I'm going to talk about, because when I do these presentations, I'm kind of thinking, if I was you, what would I want to know? What kind of questions? What hurdles do I have? What can I do to help you? So I'm going to talk about instructions, because you definitely need something. Because again, the liability is on you, not on you personally, but on the employer. So that's my tip on notaries. Any other tips on, the other thing, I'm sorry, that I was going to mention, because this is such a big deal, remote workers, like I said, are here to stay. There are companies that are developing now that's about all they do. They do I-9 verification compliance, and they have their own programs, and you pay them a fee for whatever, and they do that for you. Again, it's always, when it comes back to you, you need to verify what they did, but it gives you an option to use somebody else. And obviously there's other companies that already exist that are thinking, this is another service that I can offer, a value added service to my clients, or whatever it is. Okay, awesome. Any questions here? Yeah. So here is kind of how this works or should work for remote hires. and use and authorize agents. You have the HR sends the I-9 package or whatever you have. It could be a link. Remember, when the new I-9 comes, all of this has to be updated to the employee. The employee completes section 1 because they can do that on their own. They gather the identity documents and work documents based on the list of acceptable documents they meet with the remote agent, the notary, the person. The authorized agent, whoever that is, could be an employee, it could be a whoever, reviews the original documents in person with the employee. The agent completes section 2, and that's why it's important that they have some sort of, roadmap as to what to do. They make the copies of the supporting documents and they submit the I-9 and the supporting documents to you. And when it comes back to you, I would suggest promptly review them, you or whoever, and the work site completes the I-9, completes the documents, and then creates the E-Verify of applicable. Awesome. I like it when you're doing the right things. It saves me headaches. Okay, so this is here for you. If you don't have something like this, it is as simple as possible. Again, tips for using agents, and some of you have mentioned this already. Have a policy, provide instructions to that agent, use someone with prior experience, very helpful. Check with other HR professionals. What are they doing? What have you heard? Review the form and the supporting documents soon after the completion. Don't put them away. And when I have time, you never have time. Employer's liability, not the agents. Okay. And this is also part of, you've heard me talk about the future course. We have a very detailed that I read a lot of stuff and I summarized, if I was the HR or a policy or a process for you that I put together. So this is kind of highlights of what that is. I think it's a 5-page document, but it's very detailed. And again, this would be a part of a course that we are putting together, but it's really a good idea to have some instructions in place and a policy. Okay. Prepare for the exciting future of virtual verification. Who is ready for that? All right, have I lost you all? I want to see those thumbs up. Okay. Yes. So it's not here yet, as I said to you, but I think we're as close. I love it. Thank you. We're as close as we have ever been. Work in progress. I think it would be a huge thing for everybody. So this is what we're looking at. So not many people have seen this, so pay attention. This is very sneak peek as to what is coming and what have been talked about for the last maybe 4 or 5 months. DHS may make employers' virtual inspection of Form I-9 original documentation a permanent option. Yes. The exact details are still unknown, but this is what we know. The proposed rule could provide an alternative to the in-person verification procedure, similar to the virtual flexibility process temporarily in place right now, with additional requirements. And that's the piece that we're going to talk about the most. And also actually, the verification procedures would change a little. So for those, we review what is available right now and what you can do. So this is kind of taking it further. Okay. Proposed permanent virtual verification option rule was introduced in August 22. The public comment closed October 17, 2022. Again, huge step. If implemented, is a huge step on I-9 compliance. This is the crystal ball. What is going to happen into the future? Of course, they're going to have to change the form again, because the current form is not envisioning future permanent verification. But hopefully it's just going to be a little check. That's what is proposed. That says something like documents verified virtually, because when that is checked, then that drives the other things that need to happen. So some of the proposals are that you're going to have a different retention period when the documents are presented remotely. Okay. There's going to be additional fraudulent documentation detection process and anti-discrimination training requirements for employers, and limits which employers could be available or would be available to use this option. And the next slide is about that. And this is why I'm also covering E-Verify, because one of the things out of the proposals, one of the things that is most likely to stick is that in order to use this permanent virtual verification, the employees have to be enrolled in E-Verify and be in good standing. Now, what does good standing mean? Again, it can be open, but that's why I also asked you the question about, how many TNCs do you have? That would be a consideration into, are you in good standing or not? In some cases, people or companies have an E-Verify account, but they have never used it for whatever reason. They thought it was a good idea at some point and they did it, and they didn't use it. Well, they're not in good standing. Or they have a large amount of tentative no confirmations, or, those would not be in good standing. So those are things that, if you're not in tune with your E-Verify, whoever is doing that, and the data that is coming out of that process, you do need to take a look at it at some point, because E-Verify, the government has been trying forever and ever and ever. This program, when it started, was called Basic Pilot. How many of you were around when Basic Pilot got started? It's like 20. It was almost when I started practicing immigration laws. That's how old it's been. Not me. Good for you. Well, I was there when this was invented, and again, it was called Basic Pilot, and no one wanted to enroll. And then became E-Verify. And then no one wanted to enroll because it's an additional burden on you. And frankly, again, like I said before, it doesn't eliminate liability. On the contrary, like I said to you yesterday, a company that had tentative non-confirmations, they used those as evidence of, knowingly hire. So it's been a pain in terms of, it doesn't really provide you much protection, so why do it? But, they've been adding carrots and carrots and carrots as to why you should enroll in E-Verify. And of course, for many of you, government contracts, state contracts, in some cases for nationals to get STEM, E-Verify. They've tried all kinds of things. And I think now finally they have come up with the one that is going to give them the E-Verify enrollment that they're looking for. Because why wouldn't you enroll in E-Verify if at the end of the day, you'll be able to do virtual verification? So it is important to look at E-Verify and start paying more attention to it. The other thing that is out there, and there has been a lot of argument as to this last one here, not have been subject to a fine, settlement, or conviction relating to the employment verification practices. And our argument has been, immigration lawyers, that's okay. Fine and settlement should be out of there because they're very irrational. Convictions, maybe, because that takes it out of the hands of ICE, and it's more of a judge making that decision. So that's kind of where we are with this piece of it. And then the next one is, when can we expect this? And so the proposed rule, again, promulgation August 2023. That means, at that point, we're going to have a better idea as to what the rule will look like. Implementation, estimated process, end of 2023, maybe beginning of 2024. If we're doing it on the government's timeline, most likely 24. It could be released initially as a pilot program or full rollout if certain security measures are in place, and that is the biggest issue that the government has, the security measures in place that are up to their standards. And then here's the thing that is kind of interesting to me, and you should pay attention to it, because this is where it's going to change in terms of the virtual verification that you're doing right now. So right now you could accept a fax, you can accept an email, you can look at through Zoom. The way you would be able to do permanent virtual would be that you're going to have to use a video component. So fax, email goes away. You have to use a visual component to see the person, and then you're going to have to provide a secure method of transmission for the documents. So it's not just going to be, sent to you via email. You're going to have to provide a secure link. So those are all things that you have to start thinking about. Most of you probably have the ability to provide this right now if the program were to be implemented tomorrow. But if you don't, or this is not a component of your HR department processes, it's something that you need to start looking at. Okay. And that is my crystal ball, the end of my crystal ball. And so, does that sound good to you all? Yes, was that interesting to see or hear? Oh, okay, yay. Well, you've earned a 10-minute break, and so have I, because I've been talking for a while here. I typically get you to interact with me more, but I was like, this is kind of crystal ball kind of stuff. So you get a 10-minute break. I am going to start the clock. Let me see. Gosh, Danny, where are you? Yay, he worked. Okay, it's 3:08. We'll be back at 3:18. See you back. All right, bye. Okay, let me see those hands. Let me see the yeses. Are we back together? Cool. All right. Yes. Okay. Awesome. Let me see more hands, more yeses. You're back with me. We lost a few people on the break. I'm always afraid to give breaks. All right. I see enough yeses and hands and back. And okay, here we go. Last stretch. Position yourself to be in compliance and avoid fines. Last time we talked about this case, 2.6 million for a lot of stakes that could have been corrected, 50 people workforce, imagine larger workforce. So my question to you, when ICE knocks, would you be ready? Would the company be ready? And that's part of the reason why you're here, to try to be as ready as you can be, because you only have 3 days. And I think I said to you before, they typically come Friday afternoon. I don't know why, but and that's what happened to this company. They just did not have enough time to put the records together. So I don't know how many of you have seen the metrics that ICE use to calculate the fines, and how does that work? Okay, cool. Yeah, something else that you can say, oh, something new that I haven't seen before. Okay, this changes on a regular basis. This is the latest, and it does not go down, it goes up. And I'm going to explain to you what some substantive verifications are. And there's a substantive verification or substantive violation and a uncorrected technical violation. And this fines on the first chart apply to those. And they apply per violation. So for example, on that example that I just gave you at the beginning of that I-9 that had the foreign national checking that they were a US citizen when, no, a legal permanent resident when they were not. That's a fine that is a substantive violation that gets assessed at $252. If this is the first offense, so I'm going with the minimum. They have never been audited before. This is the first offense for this employer, so $252. And then in that particular case, there were other things that they would have been fined for, but let's go there. Then we go to section 2, and then the EAD was accepted, and that's a contradiction from what was put in section 1. That would have been assessed as a separate fine. So plus 252 plus 252, or 252 plus 252. Then the EAD was accepted, where it was placed as the list C document, which is not, it's a list A document. That would have carried another 252 fine. So it's very easy to have at least $1,000 per I-9 on fines when you get audited. So very easily for the scale on fines to go up. And then what happens after that is ICE looks at the total amount of I-9s. So say you had 100, and the percentage of those I-9s, absolutely, yes, every error. So the question was, so are you saying you can get multiple fines on one single I-9? Yes. The average fine per I-9 is $1,000. That's the average. So that's how this works. And then it can get, there's another metric separate from this one that is that mitigating. Every time that you hear me say, you know, this, you could use the training as part of your mitigating factors. ICE looks at the percentage of I-9s that had errors. I can guarantee you, because this is what I do every day, that no matter how good you think your I-9s are, if we look at them with our eyes, which is trained to look at them with the government eyes, we are going to tell you that there are errors in there, most likely. Even if you complete them in an electronic format, they're just nicer. They look better, but they still have errors. In fact, I don't know how that happened, but the one that I just talked to you about with the EAD on list C, it was an electronic I-9 system. And I think I told you on the first workshop that you have to be very, very careful if you're using an electronic system and what you're using, and not to rely on the program completely, because some of those programs are worse than completing the form by hand. They just look better, but USS doesn't care how they look. They care about the results of what what you put in there. So backtracking. If you have a certain percentage of I-9s that is incorrect, say 50% or more, and I can't remember off the top of my head exactly how the metrics works, but there's 5 categories that they can enhance your fines by 5%. One of them being the percentage of error, another one being the size of the employer, another one being whether you actually are found to have higher undocumented workers. The other one being good faith compliance. So there's 5 of those. So they will enhance. So they say you had 100 I-9s, 60% of them had errors, and they all were assessed about, $1,000 each. So my math is not the best here, but 60 I-9s at 1,000, so $60,000 in fines, because 60 I-9s had errors. And then ICE decides, oh, well, they were so chaotic that we're going to enhance those fines by 5% because of the amount of errors, by 5% because they had no policy in place, they had no training in place, and, they didn't seem to care about their I-9, so 5% more. Then 5% more because they're not a small employer, So the 60,000 now can become, they can enhance that fine by up to 25% more. So that's how this works. And then when we come in, we start looking at those 5 factors and say, well, wait, they did have this program in place. They are being trained and they did So we wanted to reduce the 5% of mitigating. And then, well, no, they should not be considered a large employer because blah, blah, blah. And, and then also mitigate in terms of saying, well, okay, sorry, we did this, but here are all the stuff that we're putting in place so this doesn't happen again, But you can save a lot of that by proactively doing what you're doing, okay? So this is just a peek at how this happens. And then you remember when I said to you the knowingly hire, when I said to you, when you have an I-9 that is not available, you have someone on payroll, but no I-9 for whatever reason, that is taken as a knowingly hire. That begins at 627. And so if you have 10 people with no I-9s, each one of those are going to be at a minimum 627, and that for sure will be enhanced because of the known hire. Okay, so that's how that works. So substantive violations. So I said to you, remember that so there are certain violations that are worse than others. Substantive violations begin at 252, and they can go up to 2,507 or more per error. Failure to timely prepare or present the I-9 is a substantive violation. Failure to complete the correct version of the I-9. So this is important. This is why it's so important on your checklist when we transition from one form to the other, when are you going to start doing it? When is the when is the implementation day that all your team is ready to transition so that you're using the correct form, that there is no manager out in some place that is using the old form because they didn't know, and they hire somebody and they're using the correct form. Failure to ensure that the box attesting to the citizenship or the immigration status is checked or is checked only. Failure to ensure the legal permanent resident or non-citizen enter his or her status information. You remember we talked about, what is the USCIS number? Where do you find it? What is the I-94 record? Where do you find it? So that is all of that. Failure to sign the attestations, failure to review and verify proper documents, failure to comply with Section 2 within 3 business days, complete Section 2. These are some of the substantive violations. So this is all of this. If you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of this, each one of them gets assessed the 252. And then we have something else that is called technical violations. These are minor errors, like they didn't include the address in Section 1 or the date of birth, or you failure to ensure the non-citizen provide a USCIS number on Section 1, but it's listed in Section 2 in some way, and you have a legible copy of the document that is retained with the Form I-9. Failure to provide the document title, identification, but only if a legible copy of the documents is retained with the I-9 and presented with the inspection. The other thing that happens with technical violations, if you remember over here, the metrics is for substantive and uncorrected technical violations. So when you get a notice of inspection, you can go back as you're preparing your I-9, so you're going to produce. If you start seeing some technical violations that you can correct them. And you will not get fined because you are allowed to correct those technical violations before providing the documentation to us. And that we do too. But if you have, 1,000 I-9s or even 100, and they're all messy and there's a lot of corrections that need to be made, you're not going to be able to do it. And that's what happened to that other company. They just didn't have enough time to fix anything. They have to produce what they had. But if you had enough time or you had a small workforce, there are some things that can be fixed before you produce them, and mostly only if you retain copies of the supporting documents. So how many of you retain copies of supporting documents? How many of you are keeping copies? Okay. Good. Awesome. To me, that's a good practice. It really helps you in many, many ways. So kudos. Okay. We touched on this before. So just a general review. Information from the Form I-9 and gets entered into E-Verify. If there is a data mismatch, you receive a tentative non-confirmation, and there is a DHS or a Social Security kind of verification process. You provide a letter to the employee that says you need to go to SSA or DHS, and you have to correct. You have to get them to correct the data entry. And then when they resolve the issue, you typically get something back from E-Verify the saying, this has been corrected. This is typically the process, and many of you are familiar with. Create the case, get the results, case closed. I think the next slide. Okay, we touched on this on the first true and false that I gave you, but again, a lot of the reasons for TNCs is information not entered correctly or record mismatch. Someone didn't get their, didn't go to Social Security when they got married, or someone got a green card and didn't update their records with Social Security, or didn't update their records with, well, typically Social Security. because DHS would have the updated records. So they would have to go to Social Security and get that updated. Or someone with DHS typically is, maybe CBP didn't enter the correct information, so there is a mismatch. And this happens, and I think I may have said this to you in the other workshop. I always tell our foreign nationals, you need to make sure that, and in fact, for many of us, we check it. So we want to make sure the I-9 is correct, because if there is an error there, say they're on an H-1B, and this has happened to us not often, thankfully, but we had an L1 worker, which is an intra-company transfer and executive. He came in on an L1 visa, but CBP admitted him as a B1. Well, of course, when you put him through E-Verify, there is a mismatch because the DHS records from CBP are showing a B1, but this is an L1 worker. So he had to go back to DHS and they fixed it. And then of course the mismatch went away. But those are the kind of things that happen that can lead to a mismatch. Now, this was enacted last year. So I want to make sure that all of you are aware of it. What was happening because of the pandemic, E-Verify was getting a lot of tentative non-confirmations that were not being taken action. So they just had all this open tentative non-confirmations and they had no idea what was going on. So as always, they come back and put the pressure on the employers to do something about it. So they created this timeline, and the timeline that you need to be the most aware of is this first 10 days. When you get a TNC, you have to obviously, if you have to take further action, that action needs to happen within those first 10 days. So within those first 10 days, you need to meet with the employee and have the employee decide what they're going to do. They're going to challenge the tentative non-confirmation, or they're just going to say, no, okay, fine, I'm not going to come back. And if that's the case, we close the case, they're terminated, they're done. But if they are going to contest the tentative non-confirmation because maybe a mismatch, and they kind of know, yeah, I didn't update my record, whatever, you have to make them sign that document from E-Verify that says, yes, I am going to contest this non-confirmation, and this all has to happen within those 10 days. And then they go off and contact Social Security and DHS. Now that this is where it becomes a little complicated, because sometimes it's very easy. They can go and they can get it taken care of, done. Sometimes it takes a lot longer than 8 days or whatever. And you have to be very careful on taking an adverse action against a worker that has the tentative non-confirmation, especially right now, because everything is taking longer. Even Amazon deliveries are taking longer. So have you noticed that? They're getting better, but anyway. So I would be careful if you have someone with a TNC and they're telling you that they are taking action. Just keep following up, make sure that they're doing what they need to do. If they're waiting for a document to come from abroad, or if they're waiting, do not take an adverse action unless I would say I would give it as much as you can. I think you would not be penalized as long as you're showing good faith effort to get this resolved, and you can be liable. You have more to lose in many ways, not just because you're losing potentially a good worker. But yeah, that's the very extreme. I would be very, very careful to terminate an ATSC. And I would recommend, if you're ever considering doing something like that, consult with a lawyer, an employment lawyer, because, and we've worked on some of those cases with employers, and typically it ends up being resolved, and then everybody's happy. Okay. Okay. Quizzes. Are we ready? Come back to me. Okay. Yes. Here we go. Okay. The end of temporary virtual verification is July 31st, 2023. I must stay alert to changes, make plans to verify those workers who have only been verified virtually, and prepare for what is next. Yes, no, it depends. Yes. Cool. Okay, that was easy. Okay. If a worker provides you with an employment authorization document that is about to expire, you should review the EAD category code and do further research. Yes. Cool. Okay, love it. We're learning. Okay, I have an inactive E-Verify account. Considering now that I know the future importance of E-Verify in potential permanent virtual verification, I want to start using the account. Can I go back and start creating cases for workers hired while the account was inactive? What do you all think? We haven't talked about this. Got it. The answer is no. Okay, good. All right. I just filed a timely H-1B extension for an employee. We touched about this one on the last workshop. I received the H-1B USCIS receive notice, but the petition has not been approved yet, and her status is ending. Can I continue to employ this person in H-1B status? Yes. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Awesome. And the reason is, and this only happens, it's only said in an H-1B provision, that if they have, you have to receive, they have to receive the receipt notice, that almost serves as an automatic extension of their current H-1B status. So, very nice rule that we use all the time. I should never re-verify a permanent resident card. And almost all permanent resident cards have an expiration date. How? If you read your bonus materials, you would have the answer to this question. And the answer is, it depends. Okay? So go read your bonus materials. Most cards, most permanent resident cards, you do not have to re-verify. Okay? That's a general rule. But there are permanent resident cards that are, they're not the card necessarily. So there are some foreign nationals that come into the United States, they get their green card through consular processing, meaning they're not here in the United States. They, for whatever reason, they were always abroad, or for some reason they had to go abroad and re-enter with the green card. And they come in, and what USCIS does, or the consulate, they have a stamp on their passport that is I-551, if I remember. And it's a conditional stamp. That stamp is good for typically a year, and it has to be re-verified. Okay. The other situation is, I said it yesterday too. Yes, you remember yesterday that I said to you that some conditional legal permanent residents have that receipt notice because they filed to remove the conditions, but the cases are taking so long that now USCIS is giving this 1 or 2 year extension so that they can get rid of their backlogs. So there are some cases where you do need to re-verify. The majority of them, when they give you the residency card, you're done. Okay. Can a family member or another employee or a notary verify the employee documents in person and complete Section 2 of the Form I-9 as an agent of the employer? You should know the answer to this one. Yeah. Okay. An employer can be liable for knowingly hire of an unauthorized worker for failure to, oh, I missed, okay, for failure to take an action on an E-Verify TNC. Talked about this one also. Yes. Okay. An immigration policy, we haven't talked about this, should contain some of these items: the name of the position in charge of the immigration compliance, the rule for retention of supporting documents, the plan for ongoing training for those involved in the I-9 process, and process for conducting internal audits. What do you think? Yes, no, maybe? Yes. And if you do not have an immigration policy in place, this is something, sounds right, yes. This is something else that it should be added to the bucket list. And we will talk about also on the course. Okay, I must verify an in-person, I must verify in person a worker that was initially verified virtually and has returned to work on a consistent basis within 3 business days of the return, and annotate the Form I-9 accordingly. Yes. Okay. Last one, you're doing so good. When I review an employee's identity, this one can be tricky. When I review an employee's identity and employment authorization documents, I should make copies of them. Okay. Okay. I said this one is tricky because some employers have a policy that they do not make copies. And there are some reasons for not making copies. I am of the position, like I have said to you before, that I think is always good, especially your population of employees, to make copies. And also, if you use E-Verify, you are required to keep copies of certain documents. So it's all around. In general, it's a yes. Okay. You all did fantastic. I am going to skip the timer and I'm going to go to, okay, let's remember, you remember those numbers that you selected at the beginning of the presentation on a scale 1 to 10, being great and then total confused. Where are we now? Has it gone up? Yay, I love it. I've seen 7s before. I'm seeing 8 now. Yes, and 9s. Okay, goal accomplished. Very good. That's what I was hoping. Yes. Okay. Okay, you will get another bonus. Danny will be sending that to you. Also good stuff to look at. I mean, again, we're putting things in there that I thought you would benefit from. Okay, now you have heard me talk about the course a few times. I mean, there's so much to cover, and I really hope, and first I commend you for being here. I know we're all busy, taking 2 hours of your time, 2 days, and engaged, which I am so grateful, because it's so hard to be on this side and nothing happens over there. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. It makes it so much better for me and for you. So because there's so much to learn, and believe me, I want to help you have less headaches. It costs a lot of time for me and my team to put this together, but we love it. We love to see the 8s and the 9s, and that's what we do. That's our job. So the new course that we're working on, I'm going to run this workshops again so that you know, if you have other employees that in your teams or other ones that you know that would benefit from this, you've been part of it. I'm going to run them again in February and March to get more people through this process. And it's just not the same. I mean, obviously you're going to watch the replays and it's going to make sense to you because you've been here, but it's not the same when, I mean, So that's one thing. Just know that I'm going to run this again. It's going to be very similar format. I'm going to update them as things happen. So that's another, bonus for the other people. It will be the same cost, kind of the same situation. But then in the second quarter of 2023, hopefully, most likely by then, the I-9 form will be out. But even if not, I'm already preparing a virtual course. It's going to be a little different. It's going to be like maybe an hour for 4 weeks. And that's going to be $500 total. And it's going to have bonuses and whatnot. And then there's going to be a VIP option that is going to have enhancements to that. I would highly recommend, if you think this workshops have been good for you and enhance your level of confidence and your knowledge that you should have, I can guarantee you, I don't know, I put a lot of work into this. I put it from my heart, and I think the training is really good. So I hope you think so too. These are some of the things that we're going to talk about. The new Form I-9, the new Form Section 2, new Form I-9 Section 2. Again, how to fill it out, the various documents. This is a section that there's mistakes all the time. So that's going to be one of the focus of the course. The other one is going to be employment authorization documents, and talk about the various categories. This is going to help you. So we're going to talk about those that are incident to status, which in fact also includes L2s and E2s. That's like a brand new rule for maybe 4 months ago. And then those that are on the automatic extensions. So we'll cover that, which would allow you to keep and hire other workers. And then we're also going to talk about remote agents, tips, policies, and whatnot. How does that sound? Awesome. Okay. Well, I hope to see you all there. In the meantime, again, so Danny is sending the QR code on the chat to submit questions like you did before. If you have some questions that we can help you with, again, try not to be case specific, in general. And what I will do, I may incorporate it in the next workshops with the next group of people, or part of the course when we get there as we draft it. You're also going to get a join the wait list for the course, so that you get information as to once we develop it, or as we develop it. Oh, there it is. So I want to see all of your names there. There is no obligation to join the course if you put your name on the wait list, but it's going to give us an idea as to the level of interest. And we can also run some things by you as to, you're going to get updates as to this is what we're tackling on this, I think it's just another way for you to stay up to date as to what's happening. And all you're going to get from me is good stuff. You know that. And I think that is it. Oh, so what are the 5 reasons for the 5? Gosh, I used to know this by heart, but so off the top of my head, the size of the employer, the level of the percentage of incorrect I-9s, the presence of unlawful workers, the mitigating factors, like I said, whether you have policies, trainings, this I would use as a mitigating factor. And the other one was, I can't remember, but actually I'll use that as a post. The 5 factors to mitigate, but at least those are 3 of them, 4 of them. I can't remember I argue this on my things, but yeah, but compliance is part of the level of compliance. Will come to me. Another topic. So for those of you that are on that list of wait list, you'll get the 5 factors. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for being with me. Again, I appreciate you being here. Appreciate you being engaged. love to see that level up and look forward to seeing your names on the wait list and staying with us. Okay, actually, Danny put them in there. Business size, good faith, seriousness of the violations, unauthorized worker, and history of violations. Thank you, Danny. Okay. Thank you all for being here. Stay well. See you all out there. Bye-bye.